You probably see this as just another piece of yard waste, something you rake up, get rid of, and forget about. You might even pay someone to haul them away, but you see this as trash for medieval peasants. This was a treasure chest. What you're looking at could be a source of light in the darkness, a way to keep your family warm, a method for purifying your living space, and even a tool for communication. The humble pine cone holds a density of resources that modern life has taught us to ignore. In the medieval world, every single thing in nature was looked at for its value, its potential to keep a family alive. While nobles had their castles, the common peasant had the forest. They developed an intimate understanding of their environment that we've almost completely lost. They saw potential where we just see problems. A lot of myths have sprung up about how medieval peasants used these things. Some are true, some are romanticized, and some are just plain wrong. We're going to unlock 7 lost secrets of the pine cone, but we're not just going to repeat old myths. We're going to test them, understand the science, and show you how these ancient ideas translate into real-world survival skills you can actually use. By the end of this video, you won't just see a pine cone, you'll see a compact survival kit, gifted to you by nature. Secret 1. The insect-repelling smoke bomb. The first secret we're unlocking tackles a universal problem: biting insects. There's this popular belief, you see it on survival forums all the time, that medieval peasants would toss pine cones into their fireplaces to create a smoke that drove bugs out of their homes. It paints a simple, effective picture of folk wisdom. But is this picture accurate? When we dive into the history, the evidence for this being a widespread, intentional technique is thin. Their main concern was fuel, getting the most heat for the least effort. Any insect repellent effect was likely a welcome byproduct, not the primary goal. So the idea of this being a well-known medieval secret is probably more of a modern myth. However, this is where it gets interesting. The reason this myth is so believable is because it's scientifically sound. This is the true secret. The smoke from a burning pine cone really is an insect repellent. Pine trees produce a sticky resin to defend themselves from insects, and this resin is loaded with compounds called terpenes, that fresh smell of a pine forest. You're smelling terpenes like aphapinine. When you burn a pine cone which is full of this resin, those terpenes are released into the smoke. For many insects, these compounds are irritating, and they'll leave the area. It's nature's own bug spray. A medieval peasant wouldn't have known the term terpene, but they would have noticed that some smoke was better at keeping bugs away than others. So how do we turn this into a practical skill? It's incredibly simple. Let's say you're at a campsite, and the mosquitoes start coming out. You've got a campfire going, but they're still swarming. This is where your pine cones come in. Just take a few dry open pine cones and toss them into the embers. You'll notice they smolder and burn slowly, releasing a thick, aromatic smoke. This is the terpene-rich smoke that will form your protective barrier. For the best effect, place the cones on the upwind side of your fire, so the breeze carries the smoke through your camp. You'll want to add a new cone every 15 to 20 minutes. It's a simple technique. No chemicals, no batteries. You're just using the tree's own defense system for your benefit. It might not be a lost medieval secret, but it's a powerful secret of the natural world. Secret 2. The Smoldering Fuel Extender. The second secret is all about the most fundamental element of survival: fire. The story goes that medieval peasants used pine cones as a fuel extender or an overnight log. The idea is that they put a few pine cones on the embers at night, and because of their density and resin, they would smolder for hours, leaving a live coal in the morning. But let's apply a critical lens. Is this how it really happened? Again, the direct historical evidence is very limited. The main way to preserve a fire overnight was banking it, covering the embers of a large, dense log with ash. Pine cones burn hot, but also relatively fast. They just don't have the mass to reliably last an entire night. This secret seems to be more of a modern survival theory than a documented medieval practice. So what is the true secret here? The truth lies not in using a pine cone to last all night, but in its role as an unparalleled fire starter. This is where the pine cone truly shines. Dry pine cones are, without a doubt, one of nature's perfect forms of kindling. Their scales are spaced out, allowing for maximum airflow, meaning a huge surface area is exposed to the flame. But the real magic is the resin. It's a natural fuel accelerant. A single match held to a dry pine cone is often enough to get it burning vigorously in seconds. This is a massive advantage in a survival situation where you might be cold and wet. Let's walk through the practical application. Imagine you need to start a fire in damp conditions. You gather your slightly damp twigs and build a small teepee structure. Now, instead of trying to light the damp twigs directly, you light one single pine cone. As soon as it catches, place that burning pine cone into your fire lay. Here's the key. The pine cone acts as a miniature furnace. It will burn hot and long enough, often for several minutes, to dry out the surrounding damp twigs and ignite them. It bridges that critical gap. You can even add another cone or two to create a blast of heat that can ignite larger pieces of wood. It's not about making the fire last for 8 hours. It's about getting a powerful fire started in under 5 minutes, no matter the conditions. That's the true and far more valuable secret. It's not an overnight log, it's a fire grenade. Secret 3. The myth of the pine cone torch. The third secret revolves around light. The popular image is a medieval traveler, lost in the woods, who lights a pine cone and uses it as a makeshift torch. It's a cinematic idea we see in modern bushcraft tutorials, often presented as a rediscovered ancient skill. But did a medieval peasant actually do this? When we look at the realities, this scenario becomes highly improbable. Resinous wood, especially fat wood, was used for torches, but a pine cone itself is a poor choice. It's short, bulky, and would burn down to your hand very quickly. Plus, it burns fast. It might give you a bright flare for a minute or two, but it's not a reliable or long-lasting source of light. They had better options like tallow candles or lanterns. The pine cone torch is, for the most part, a historical fantasy. So, if it's not a portable torch, what's the true secret of the pine cone when it comes to light? The secret isn't about portability, but about control. The real value is as a stationary, controlled, and surprisingly long-lasting source of ambient light. It's not a flashlight, it's a candle. The science is in the cone's structure and resin, but with a twist. While a dry, open cone burns fast, a green, tightly closed cone behaves very differently. When lit, it smolders from the inside out. The dense structure limits oxygen, forcing it to burn down slowly. Let's explore the practical application. Imagine you're in a survival shelter. You have a fire outside for warmth, but you want a small, safe source of light inside. An open fire would be dangerous. This is where the pine cone candle comes in. Find a large, dense, and preferably still closed pine cone. Place it on a non-flammable surface like a flat rock, and light the top. It will begin to glow and smolder, producing a small, consistent flame. It's the perfect task light. The beauty of this is its safety and efficiency. It produces very little smoke, and the flame is contained. A single large, dense cone can smolder and provide this gentle light for a surprisingly long time, sometimes for close to an hour, depending on its size and moisture content. It's not the dramatic torch of legend, but it's a far more practical and intelligent use of the pine cone's properties. The secret isn't a blazing torch to light your path, but a steady, glowing ember to light your world. We're about to dive into some of the most surprising and controversial uses for pine cones, including medicine and food preservation. This is where the historical myths and the scientific realities get really interesting. If you're finding this journey into the lost knowledge of the natural world valuable, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. We are dedicated to rediscovering and testing these forgotten techniques to build a more resilient community. By subscribing, you become part of that mission. Okay, let's get back to the secrets. Secret number 4, the air-purifying incense. The fourth secret delves into the very air our ancestors breathed. There's an idea that medieval peasants burned pine cones inside their homes to purify or disinfect the air. The theory suggests that before people understood germ theory, They knew instinctively that pine smoke had a cleansing effect. However, when we turn to historical sources, this narrative starts to fall apart. While burning incense for ritual purification was a practice, there's no solid evidence that the average peasant was fumigating their home for public health reasons. It seems to be another case of modern understanding being projected onto the past. But here is where we uncover the true secret, which is more profound than the myth. The smoke from burning pine resin is a genuine antimicrobial agent and a powerful deodorizer. The myth is based on a scientific truth. As we discussed, burning pine releases terpenes, and these compounds have been shown to have antibacterial and antifungal properties. The strong scent doesn't just mask bad odors, it chemically neutralizes them. So while the practice may have been for ritual reasons, it had a tangible positive impact on their environment. Let's translate this into a modern context. Forget chemical-laden air fresheners. You can create a powerful natural air freshener with a pine cone. First, you need the resin. Look for the sticky amber-colored sap on a pine tree where it's been injured. Scrape a small amount off. Now for the application. You don't want a big fire. You want to gently heat the resin. The best way is to use a method like burning incense. Take a small non-flammable dish and place a small piece of hardened resin or a resin-rich pine cone in it. Light a small charcoal disc, the kind used for incense, and once it's hot, place the resin on top. Almost immediately, the resin will melt and release a fragrant white smoke packed with cleansing terpenes. Let this smolder in a room for 10-15 minutes. It will neutralize cooking smells and musty odors, leaving behind a clean, refreshing pine scent. The secret isn't just about making a room smell nice, it's about actively cleansing the air you breathe, using the tree's own natural defense system. Secret number 5. The Great Food Preservation Debate. The fifth secret touches on a critical aspect of medieval life: food preservation. The claim is that pine cones were used for smoking and preserving meats and fish. The logic is that the antimicrobial pine smoke would prevent spoilage. This is perhaps the most dangerous and historically inaccurate of all the pine cone myths. While smoking was a vital preservation technique, using resinous softwoods like pine was almost universally avoided. There are two very good reasons for this. First, the resin in pine creates a thick, sooty smoke that imparts a harsh, deeply unpleasant flavor to food. It would make it virtually inedible. Second, and more importantly, pine smoke can be toxic when consumed this way. The creosote in the heavy smoke can contain harmful substances. Medieval people, through trial and error, would have known this well. Do not smoke your precious winter food supply with pine. So, what is the true secret here? The connection is more subtle. The secret lies not in the smoke, but in the environment created by the pine tree. The ground beneath a dense stand of pines is often covered in a thick, dry mat of pine needles known as duff. This layer is acidic, drains water well, and is naturally resistant to mold and bacteria. This dry, cool and clean environment is ideal for short-term food storage. Think of it like a natural root cellar. A peasant could have used the pine forest as a larder. Root vegetables like carrots and turnips could be stored for weeks or even months by being buried in this dry pine duff. You dig a shallow pit, line it with dry needles, place the vegetables inside, and cover them with more needles and soil. The pine cones themselves could play a role here. By placing a layer of dry open pine cones at the bottom of the pit, you create an air gap, ensuring any moisture drains away and preventing rot. It's the same principle as putting gravel at the bottom of a potted plant. So the real secret is not about infusing food with toxic smoke. It's about using the unique properties of the pine forest ecosystem to create a natural and effective storage system. Secret samples, the fictional signal fire. Our sixth secret addresses long-distance communication. The story goes that pine cones were prized for signal fires because their resinous nature would produce a uniquely thick, white smoke that could be seen for miles. Once again, we have to question the historical basis. While smoke signals are an ancient technology, there's no specific evidence from medieval Europe that singles out pine cones. A signal fire's effectiveness depends on creating a large volume of smoke, which is typically done by adding green vegetation or wet leaves to a hot fire. A handful of cones wouldn't generate the massive plume needed. The pine cone signal seems to be another modern invention. So where does the real communication secret lie? The truth is not about sight, but about sound. The true secret is that a pine cone can be used to create a loud, sharp sound that works as an effective short-range audible signal or an alarm system. This secret is hidden in the structure of a dry, open pine cone. The scales are hard, woody, and brittle. When struck against each other, they produce a surprisingly loud clacking or rattling sound, distinct from the normal noises of a forest. Let's explore the practical application. Imagine you're with a small group in dense woods. You can tie several large, dry pine cones together on a cord. Shaking this bundle creates a loud rattle. You can agree on simple signals. 1 shake means stop, 2 means come here. But the more ingenious use is as an early warning system. This is a simple but incredibly effective tripwire alarm. String a line around your camp about a foot off the ground. Tie dry, open pine cones to the line so they hang freely. You can also stack them in unstable piles just inside the tripwire. If an animal or intruder bumps the wire, the line will shake, causing the cones to rattle and clack. The sharp, unexpected noise will be enough to wake you up instantly. The secret isn't a plume of smoke, but a sudden sharp crack in the dead of night that tells you you're not alone. Secret 7. The truth about pine cone medicine. Our final secret is maybe the most misunderstood: medicine. The popular story suggests peasants would get resin from pine cones to use as an antiseptic on wounds, a kind of natural neosporin. This claim is partially true, which makes it tricky. Pine resin does have powerful medicinal properties. It's naturally antiseptic, anti-inflammatory, and antibacterial. This is why the tree produces it, to seal its own wounds. Cultures all over the world, including in Europe and especially Native American tribes, have used pine resin for wound care for millennia. However, the idea that medieval peasants were commonly extracting resin from pine cones is likely inaccurate. It's much easier to get resin directly from the tree's trunk where it collects in large amounts. The most misleading part is the focus on the cone, when the true medicinal powerhouse is the resin found all over the tree. The true secret, and the most practical one, is understanding how to prepare and use pine resin as a first aid tool. This knowledge is timeless. First, harvest the resin from the trunk of a pine, fir, or spruce tree. For a small cut, you can apply a tiny amount of raw, clean resin directly to the wound to seal it. But for a more versatile medicine, you'll want to create a pine resin salve. You need 3 ingredients: pine resin, a carrier oil like olive oil or rendered animal fat, and a little beeswax if you have it. Gently heat the oil in a pot over a low fire. Add the pine resin and stir until it dissolves, infusing the oil with its medicinal compounds. Strain the mixture through a cloth to remove any debris. If you have beeswax, add a small amount to the warm oil and stir until it melts. Then pour the liquid into a container and let it cool. What you now have is a powerful all-purpose medicinal salve. You can apply it to cuts, scrapes, burns, and insect bites. It will soothe inflammation and fight infection. This isn't just a story. This is a practical, effective, and scientifically backed natural medicine you can make yourself. The secret wasn't in the pine cone itself, but in the life-giving resin the entire tree provides. So we return to where we started, a single pine cone. It doesn't look like simple yard waste anymore, does it? We've journeyed through history and myth, separating fiction from practical fact. We've learned that while the old legends aren't always accurate, the underlying truths of the pine cone's power are very real. We've debunked the myths of the pine cone torch and pine smoked meat and replaced them with the truths of the pine cone candle and the pine forest root cellar. We've clarified the legends of insect repellent and overnight fuel, revealing the reality of the pine cone as a fire-starting catalyst and a source of bug-repelling smoke. We looked past the folklore of a signal fire and found the genius of a pine cone tripwire alarm, and we've unlocked the true medicinal secret held within the tree's resin. The pine cone is a symbol of something much larger, the huge library of knowledge that exists in the natural world. For centuries, our ancestors read this library every day. It was their hardware store, their pharmacy, and their grocery store. They understood that survival wasn't about having the fanciest gear, but about having the right knowledge. We live in a world that has taught us to be disconnected from this. But the secrets are still there. The next time you see a pine cone on the ground, you won't just see debris. You will see a fire starter, an insect repellent, a natural candle, an audible alarm, and a key to food storage. You will see a vessel of resin, the source of a powerful medicine. You will see a reminder that the most powerful survival tools are not the ones you can buy, but the ones you can understand. The 7 secrets we've unlocked today are just the beginning. The forest is filled with thousands more. What other lost skills or uses for everyday natural objects have you heard of? Share them in the comments below. Let's create a community dedicated to rediscovering this vital knowledge together. Your comment might just be the spark for our next investigation. And if you want to continue this journey and learn more practical skills that bridge historical wisdom and modern survival, make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on. We have a lot more to explore. Until then, stay curious and learn to see the world around you with new eyes. The skills of the past may very well be the key to your future. The key to your future. The key